Okay, this is video number 3 in automotive hand tools. All right, and this drawer is kind of a miscellaneous drawer. This is called a spark plug gapper, and this is something you ought to buy kind of early in your career, and they're not very expensive. And the way these things work is if you look at it, it's thin here, and as you turn it, it gets thicker right here, okay? And then there's numbers on the side. And I don't know if you can read there or not, but the first one is 20 thousandths, and it's got graduations of 30 thousandths. And this measures your spark plug gap. Put your spark plug in here, and get to right there. And then this gap, this is at 45 thousandths. Okay? Let's say you need to go a little wider. You just push it on down the line, and it'll spread the spark plug open and give you a bigger gap. Let's say you need to close the gap. Just find a hard surface, kind of tap on it, and see if you can get to come in a little bit. See, now I'm down to 42 or 3 thousandths. This is called a spark plug gapper. There's other ones that are like this, but I don't like these as much. They're not quite as universal as these. This right here is called a battery brush. And the way this works is, let's say you have a lot of corrosion on your battery. You take your cable off, put this on, and you put it on there like that, and you spin it. When you take it off, makes it all nice and clear, gets rid of all the corrosion. Since you have your battery cable off, if you take this cap off, now you can put this into your cable of your battery and turn it around, and it'll clean it up. This is another tool that, after you get your sockets and ratchets and extensions and wrenches and hammers, this is another tool you ought to buy, and both of these tools can probably be bought for less than $10, so good things to have. Another good thing to have for starting off in the automotive field when you're a beginning technician, this right here is a brake pad depth gauge. So basically you can measure brake pads with this. So if customer pulls their vehicle in there and you're looking it over and their brake pads are as thick as this, well then you know that your customer needs brake pads now. The yellow means soon, and the green means it's good. It's like almost new or really good. So that's called a brake pad gauge, thickness gauge, I should say. This right here is called a feeler gauge, and this is another measuring tool. And basically, you got all these little thins on here, and all these are different sizes, and they're marked. And this will tell you the clearances of how thin something is. This is not something you need to buy right away. I would wait a little bit before I would get that. This right here is called a tire tread depth gauge. This would be another tool that would be up higher on the priority list of buying. And what this does, it tells you the tread depth of tires. So if I go over here, I take this tire right here, and I got my needle like this, and I put it right here, put it against there. Okay, now I'm measuring. I'm looking at about 6:30 seconds. I don't know if you can read that or not. So that means I have 6:30 seconds from where I measured. So this is called a tire tread depth gauge. This right here is called a tubing cutter. And the way this works is, let's say you have a piece of tubing, like some brake line or something. You put the piece of tubing in here. Let's pretend this right here is my tubing. Okay? Put this in here, and you turn this little thumb dial, and you get it tight against there. And then once you get it tight against there, you just spin it on the piece of tubing. Okay? Then you keep tightening it down, spin it 2 or 3 times, tighten it down, spin it a couple times, and then eventually it's going to take and break that. It's going to cut that tubing and give you a nice clean cut. All right, this is called an inspection mirror. Okay, this is a magnet. An inspection mirror and magnet are things you're going to want to buy early on. This right here is called a pick. Same thing you might see in your dentist office, very similar to this. Mechanics have picks as well, and they got different angles and stuff. Picks are nice to have. Just be careful, don't poke yourself, like I've done before. This right here is called a test light. Now, this is an electrical tool. This is not very, it doesn't measure electricity necessarily. What I mean by that is, so basically I put my ground here, my alligator clamp onto here. I go to here, and as you can see, it lights up, okay? That's a 12-volt battery. It only takes like 3 or 4 volts probably to light this test light. So that being said, all I can tell you is I have at least 3 to 4 volts going there. Test lights are good for checking automotive fuses and letting you know if you have some kind of current, but they're not the greatest, they're not the most accurate tool. So the way you check a fuse is you go like this on this side and on this side. If that light lights up on both sides, you know your fuse is good. If it doesn't light up at all, that means that circuit's not getting power. If one side lights up, but not the other, then that means your fuse is blown. Like I said, this is only telling you got 3 or 4 volts to your circuit. It doesn't tell you if you have 12 or not. So they're not very accurate. They're not precision. All right, these are some bigger picks right here. So you can see the different types of picks. You have your Phillips head screwdriver. Of course, you got different size bits of screwdriver, Phillips heads. Your flat heads. This right here is called a pry bar. This is not a big screwdriver. This pry bar is angled and has a metal surface here. That's for taking a hammer and hitting it and trying to chip away at something. Do not hit a pry bar handle with a hammer without this. If not, you're going to explode that handle. Trust me, I know, because I've been there. All right, this is another type of pry bar, and this is actually called a lady's finger. So somebody says, hey, go get that lady's finger pry bar. You're like, what? What's that? That's what this is. This is very nice for helping lining up holes and stuff like that. Very nice tool to have. This right here is an impact driver, and this way this works is you're going to have 2 flatheads and 2 Phillips typically. You put it in here, and let's say you have a nut or bolt that's really stubborn. You put it on there and you smack this in with a hammer, and it'll reverse it out of there for you. This would be called a stubby Phillips. As you can tell, it's short. This right here is for removing like trim clips. So let's say you want to like replace your radio, or you got to do some dash work. This is the tool. This is one of the tools you're going to want to use for that. Okay. All right, hammers. Now listen here. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but it's got what they call shot in there, and this is called a dead blow hammer, and it gives you a nice solid punch there. I use this a lot for removing tires that are stuck on the rims and tires that are stuck on the car. It won't damage the rim. This right here, this is called a ball peen hammer. Okay, this is the main hammer used by automotive technicians. If I had the little claws on here for removing a nail, that's called a claw hammer, and that would be in building and trades. Typically, when a mechanic, automotive technician asks for a hammer, they're going to want the ball peen hammer. Okay, there's different sizes of ball peen hammers for different jobs. Okay, this one right here, you notice this is made, it's golden color and it's made of brass. The reason why it's made of brass is, let's say you're trying to hammer out like a stud or bolt. You hit this, it won't damage the threads to the stud or bolt because this brass is a softer metal. If you are measuring on a stud or bolt that you don't want to damage the threads on, and you don't have a brass hammer, you can get what they call a brass punch. All right. This is a punch. They got punches of different sizes. Hammer on this end when you're trying to drive something out. This right here is a center punch. What this is for is if your bolt breaks off, then you can put this right in the middle of your bolt, smack with a hammer, it's going to make a little indentation in there. And then that gives you a spot to start your drill bit to start drilling out that bolt. This is called a file. And there's different types of files. This is called a wire brush. Okay, and this is called a chisel. And this funky hammer is not something you're going to see a lot, but this is for installing pistons. So I would call that a piston hammer maybe, but this is for installing pistons in engines. All right, that's all for this video. Thank you for watching. This is video number 3. Stay tuned.